Welcome to Unit 16 of the TESOL course at Southern Utah University. This video focuses on materials for TESOL. We'll talk about types of materials that can be used in the classroom, offer some tips on using those materials effectively, and also talk about tips for creating your own materials. Obviously, the most commonly used material in a classroom would be textbooks. Textbooks that are designed to teach English to speakers of other languages. And there's a good variety of textbooks. Textbooks might also involve other things like teaching students how to use a dictionary, or an encyclopedia or thesaurus or other kind of resource book. Addition to textbooks, you may want to use realia. And realia is a term that's used to describe real-life objects that can be helpful and useful when teaching in the classroom. So this may involve using a calculator, using objects, maybe you're role-playing shopping. So it can be, maybe it's using actual cooking ingredients and tools because you're doing a lesson on how to write recipes or follow recipes. So realia is a great thing to bring into the classroom to make the language learning seem relevant and useful. Obviously, many teachers are familiar with using audio and video sources in the classroom. This can be great because it brings in another model of the language into the classroom, can expose students to a greater variety of language models, and it can be very motivating to some students to watch a video or listen to an audio, particularly if it's very engaging or has music in it. In addition to those sources, there's other kinds of technology using computers, using digital devices, smartphones, tablets, connecting to the internet and a variety of internet sources as well. This connects students to lots of ways to be exposed to the language, but also practice the language on their own. So there's lots of sources that teachers can make use of to help their students connect with the language. As we look at using these sources, we need to think wisely about how to use them. So this involves, first we need to evaluate the source. Is this a good source? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from a university? Is it from a commercial website? Think about maybe its cost, how it connects to the outcomes of our program, how motivating is it to learners, particularly if it's a textbook. Does it have color photographs? Is it black and white? Are they going to want to use it on their own or even want to use it in class? We might also look at how well does the source match the kinds of activities we're doing in the classroom. If we think about Nation's 4 strands of language learning, which strand is this source or this material going to help students to develop? And if it's not really helping with any of them, then maybe this isn't a great source. Or maybe it needs to be adapted so that it better fits an outcome that we have to the course. We want to make sure that it's at the appropriate level for the learners. And even if it's maybe an authentic source that is at a higher level than what the students are able to regularly process, there may still be a way to adapt the task so that they can still interact with the source or the material in a way that meets their level. It's also always good to remember that we need to have a backup plan when we use any kind of material. What happens if we forget our books? What happens if the technology doesn't work? What's our backup when this doesn't work? How can we still have a meaningful and useful lesson if the materials don't work the way that we expected? And certainly whenever you use materials, make sure you practice with them ahead of time so that you feel confident in delivering them, making sure that they work properly, that it's seamless, that you're providing effective instructions before the students start interacting with the materials, because it's hard to get their attention back once they're interacting with the materials, to provide them the necessary instructions so they know what and how to use it most effectively. It's also helpful to think about to what degree could this material help students to practice and study on their own. So technology, internet sources can be really great for that. Same with audio and video. Can you design a task that students can then take that task and practice more on their own outside of the classroom? Or can they use this and you've provided them enough instruction so they can think about how they can tailor the practice to study independently things that they're interested about the language? In addition to thinking about how to use materials, we could also think about how to create materials when we can't find something that fits our needs. So when we are creating materials, we want to make sure we have good equipment, that we test it, that we always listen and evaluate to what we've created to make sure that it fits our needs. We want to make sure we use authentic language, that it doesn't sound artificial, and that it's helping students practice realistic and useful structures that will lead to realistic and useful tasks. We want to make sure that it's targeting their appropriate level so that the rate of speech is not too fast for them, that it's using the types of grammar and vocabulary that they're ready for. It's also helpful to try and use variety when we're creating sources. So variety can be visual variety, but also if it's an audio source we're creating, maybe some dialogues, that we look at having different kinds of speakers. So you may ask other teachers to help you or other friends to help record the language that you want to present to your students. Whenever we create materials, it's always important to be realistic with the time. Sometimes we can have very ambitious goals and think, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to do this. But in addition to teaching, it's hard to dedicate enough time to create the types of materials that we can feel happy about using in the classroom. So we need to be realistic in how much we can accomplish in a given semester or a given year, and set small realistic goals. And go back and create new things in a future semester or a future school year as we have more time. That way we'll avoid burnout, and creating the materials can be fun and interesting and exciting for us, but won't become this burden that we just end up giving up on because it seems overwhelming. So in our video we talked about choosing a variety of different types of materials to use in the classroom to motivate students and to help them begin becoming more self-directed learners. We've talked about tips for using them in the classroom and always making sure we have a backup plan in case our materials don't work the way we want. And then we talked about some tips for creating materials so that we can develop the types of materials that we can't find, so that we can better tailor the learning experience to our particular teaching and learning situation.